Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Thursday, the 13th of December, comes to you from London. And we start by looking at the dollar index, just sinking a bit lower at the moment. So, dollar just weakening slightly there. The euro actually up slightly, but still bearish against the dollar. And against the yen, the dollar is still holding its bullish position. So, the dollar weakness on the index is likely to be short lived. Sterling has had a bit of a roller coaster. It was up quite sharply yesterday with all the political shenanigans that's happening in the UK. And that's turning this sterling chart short-term bullish. We've got a new upside target to 130, but we're still bearish on the point and figure chart. We've activated big downside targets with this 18-month low, and so the reality is this is likely to be a short-term counter trend move that will probably be quite short-lived. Against the euro, sterling is also just starting to look a little bit better, moving higher. Against the Swiss franc, also just moving a little bit better. And against the Aussie dollar, not yet bullish. Bitcoin down a further 1.3% overnight, so still looking pretty bearish there. US stocks last night improved further. They were up 0.5% on the S&P 500. The Nasdaq short term is still bearish. So we saw also the Dow Jones was up, but there's not enough to turn these charts bullish. And the Russell 2000 index, having made new multi-month lows, is actually, well, nearly 12-month lows, is actually still looking pretty bearish. The futures are up this morning, though. We're seeing the S&P future up a little bit, but the Nasdaq is up a third of a percent. So quite interesting there that we do look like we will open higher in the US market. The FTSE 100 index is down very slightly this morning. It was up at the open, but it's down now and still bearish short, medium, and long term. So UK market still looking vulnerable for falls, and the mid caps also looking lower, and we've got downside targets some 2.5–5% lower on mid caps, not benefiting from lower sterling the way the blue chips do. Looking at the DAX, we're down a third of a percent, the CAC Quarant down just under quarter of a percent. Tokyo was up 0.5% overnight on the 400 index, and the Hang Seng was up quite strongly, up 1.3%, and the Shanghai index was up 1.3% as well. Still got lots of downside targets for China, so it's no way are we out of the woods there yet. The Sensex in India looking a little bit stronger as well, not quite managing to get back to bullish territory on the short-term chart. The Aussie market was up slightly overnight. Brent crude is up a third of a percent this morning. Not enough to take the chart bullish. We're still bearish on the short and medium term. And WTI, much the same picture. US nat gas fell back very sharply yesterday, breaking down out of that triangle. So it's really interesting that we are breaking lower here, looking quite bearish. We've now got a downside target of 3.8%. We talked about these targets yesterday, in fact, so interesting that we've gone straight there. Heating oil is up slightly in line with crude. Looking at gold, gold is sitting at 1244, just holding on to its bullish position just. And silver also just holding on to its short-term bull trend, making a medium-term trend transition. US 10-year yields sitting steady at about 2.9%. We are back into short-term bullish on the yield chart, so it does mean we've got 2.97. Does mean we might well see a recovery. We haven't unwound these big targets yet, so interestingly, that long-term picture hasn't changed. Taking a look, and that data all coming from Thomson Reuters Icon, taking a look at the stocks themselves. All this data here coming from Yahoo Finance. So it's a good free data source. Looking at Google chart up 1.4%. 1.1% overnight. Amazon was up 1.24%. The chart's still bearish on the medium term. And has been underperforming the Dow Jones index. Taking a look at Apple, Apple were up a third of a percent, underperforming the market Apple lately, and we're seeing that in the chart, having been 25–30% higher than the Dow Jones on percentage performance this year, has fallen right back to parity, so it's given that all back. Taking a look at some of the other stocks, we've got Facebook were up 1.7%. This chart's still looking pretty bearish, underperforming the Dow Jones by 20% this year. So that's really significant. Microsoft were up 0.5%. and we also saw Netflix up 3.6%. So that was a strong performance. And Tesla, the one stock that has been bucking the trend, was only down 0.4%. So looking pretty strong there. Taking a look at the individual stocks in Oz, we can just rank by performance. Nine Entertainment were up 8%, so quite a good move there, but really a counter trend move. This is so often the case. We're seeing these big moves to the upside in downtrends. So we're seeing counter trend moves up. Sierra Resources up 8%. On the downside, we had on the downside here, we had TPG Telecom down 16%, St Barbara down a further 5%. So interesting, we're seeing that. And Domino's Pizza sinking lower there. That chart now long-term and medium-term bearish. The relative chart breaking down, so it's quite interesting downside targets there. Taking a look at China, was mostly up as we saw some really big performances. China Railway Construction up 7%. Hong Kong was also up significantly. And again, we just have a sea of green there. Only three stocks down in Hong Kong. The Nifty 50 more mixed. We had India Bulls. It's been at the top of the bottom of the leaderboard most days, India Bulls. So it's hugely volatile compared to other stocks. And then Yes Bank also at the top of the bottom leaderboard often as well, sinking lower down a further 6%, making new lows. Not so good. Taking a look at the Japanese market, this is the Nikkei 225. And we see here Takeda Pharmaceutical, we're up 7%. Looking to Europe now, at the open this morning, we have the FTSE 100. This price all coming in from Yahoo. TUI Group, the best performer in the FTSE 100, up 5%. The worst performer is British American Tobacco, down 1.8%. The FTSE 250, looking at that, we've got G4S up 9%, so quite a significant jump there, but massive downtrend. So it comes with little consolation. The same with Sergo; they're actually powering ahead now on that chart. They've had a very good week, but not enough yet to break the downtrend. And Thomas Cook, of course, up 6%, but in the scheme of what's happened with Thomas Cook of late, that's really poor consolation. Spire Healthcare on the other side of the coin, down 10%. Elementis down 10%. Ultra Electronics Group down 6%. So we're still seeing some really big falls to the downside. In terms of Europe, looking at the Euro Stock 600, we've got Company Plastique in France. They're sinking lower, making new lows. That's a terrible looking chart. TUI we talked about. SimCorp in Copenhagen also up this morning significantly, up 3.4%. But the chart's looking pretty bad. And then if we go the other side, we've got GAM Holdings in Switzerland down a massive 28% this morning. Metro Group down 10%. And Germany. So we are seeing Stora Enso down 6%. We're still seeing some very big falls in some of these stocks. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.